randomly not connected with the event. Then we started to explain, just doing a quick review, that the month of Adar, right, basically has this unique quality, Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha, that the whole month of Adar was transformed to this incredible month, where it says it's greater than all the other months, in that we don't find that there's an increase in joy in any other months. And Adar is called Bari Takif Mazle. It's called a strong and healthy mazel more than the other months. And we said we don't understand. It's one thing if Moshe's birth was sufficient in order to negate the negative decrees of Adar, which we're going to see in a second. There was, besides Haman's decreeing against the Jewish people in that month, the month itself kind of seemingly lacks, and therefore Moshe's birth perhaps would fill in that lack. But to then go and say that it's going to increase it to a whole nother level where it's greater than all the other months, we don't understand exactly why that is. And we started to explain why Adar, so to speak, on its own, without Moshe's birth, does not really have much going for it as the other months do. And we see this from when Haman wanted to throw his lot to fulfill his devious plans, Yimach Shemo. And it says he went through month after month and he saw that each month had a certain schus in it. Like, for example, the month of Nisan had the schus of Pesach, and the month of Iyar had the schus of Pesach Sheni, or because of Pesach Katan here. And not only that, and he goes through all the months, 11 months, and he finds each one has a schus. Then he goes through all the 11 months, and he finds that the mazel of that month, which is the constellation which guides that month, it also has a schus for the Jewish people. Like, for example, we said that Tela, which is like the ram, has the mazel because of our schus of Pesach as well. And Shor, which is Iyar, which means a bull. It has the schus that Yosef is called a bull. So every month had its schus and its mazel, which was all positive for the Jewish people, except for Adar had nothing going for it. And therefore we see that it's not really, and this is what the words of Haman were, right? That Adar ein lo schus, umazalo ein lo schus. Adar has no schus, and its mazel has no schus, right? So, therefore, he was rejoiced when he picked that month, because he said also the savior of these people is passed away in this month. Okay, but what he didn't know, right? That, and this is where we left off, page 332 on the very top. It says, what he didn't know is that in the first of Adar, Moshe was born, and the first of Adar, Moshe passed away. We sort of left ourselves in a strange predicament there, because that is what the Girsa of Midrash Rabbah on Esther says. Can anyone identify what's strange about that statement? Right, it's not the first that he was born in the first, he passed away. It was the seventh. He was born in the seventh, he passed away. So the Rebbe explains, even though it seems like a mistake in the Girsa, it's actually like a little hint to come and tell the very point that we're trying to make. Why do they sort of mess up Moshe's birthday? Everybody knows Moshe's birthday. To come and tell you this very point, that not only did Moshe's birthday undo the negativity which was sort of planted in Adar for whatever reasons, but it actually transformed it in such a way that it transformed the whole month, even to the point that the Midrash actually sort of mistakenly and intentionally hints that from already the first of Adar, right, the whole month is transformed. And what did Haman say? Right, so second line over here. We'll get to that point I was just making in a second. He said, so he goes on and says, we didn't know that he was born and died on that month. But he said, Amar kashem shadagim bolim kach ani bolea osan. He said, just like fish swallow, so too I will swallow them. Who's mentioned fish? Why is he mentioning fish? Pisces, because we said he picked the mazel of Adar, which was fish, right? Pisces, dagim. So he says, he like made a little drasha for himself. He said, fish, just like fish swallow other creatures, I'll swallow the Jews. Amar lo Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said to him, Rasha, wicked man. Dagim, fish, sometimes niv'alim, sometimes they get swallowed and sometimes they swallow. V'achshav also aish nivla mina bolim. This time that man, referring to Haman, will be swallowed up by the swallowers. Instead of you're swallowing us, we're going to swallow up you. This is what Hashem sort of turned his machshava around. Now, based on this little midrash, besides the sort of giveaway that I threw in there, it seems l'chora sheledas Moshe rak mevateles, that the birth of Moshe only negates the inyan abilti ratzoy sheb'misaso, the negative quality that's in his death, right? And the sort of the negative quality that's in that month. It doesn't seem from this midrash that there's a power in Moshe's birth to sort of amplify with such extra goodness. It seems like it just sort of undoes Haman's plan. So it undoes the negative. It doesn't add positive. But dugmas bittul have sharios ba'ani boleosan. In other words, just like Haman was saying, I want to swallow them. Since sometimes, including now, you get swallowed as well, right? So instead of swallowing, you'll be swallowed. So in other words, the negative you wanted to perform will be undone. But nonetheless, it's seemingly the month itself stays in the state, right? That it still doesn't have any particular qualities and any merits. And certainly not in such a way that it has even extra schus and quality over the other months of the year. So we're still not really sure how and where Adar got this except for that little remez that I told you, that it mentions that he was born on the first and died on the first, which at this point we just think that's a mistake in the text, right? We don't understand how there is some kind of an amplification. It's just that what's normally like kind of a not such a great month, Baruch Hashem, Moshe saved the day and held back the negativity. But Gimel, Yesh Lomer Abir B'zeh. We can explain now why it's such a great month, greater than all the other months. Al Pi Yedua, and we can say this according to what's known Shabiyom Huledes, on the day of a birth of a person, Hamazul Hasholet B'Yom Ahu Ozerlo. So it's a very interesting concept, especially the way he brings this out, which is a bit of a chiddush. He says when a person is born, the mazel of that day helps him. In other words, that every day has a certain mazel, right? But when a person's born, the birth of the person sort of triggers the mazel that's going at that time to act in his favor. And this is true about any person's birth, right? As we say, mazalo gover. His mazel is gover on your birthday. We have a birthday today. Where is he? He's busy being gover somewhere. That we can be sure. The mazel of the day helps the person shemazalo shel adam gover. Because the person's mazel is strong, that's two different things. The person's mazel is strong, therefore he sort of like messes with the mazel of the day to go in his direction. Koloshon HaKosef, the Gavar Yisrael. And we see that there's this idea, particularly this pasuk comes when Moshe was was sitting, and his hands were raised, and he was fighting Amalek, right? And Aaron and Hur were holding up his hands, and it says the word, but his hands were lifted. The Gavar Yisrael, the Jewish people were victorious. We overcame. So there's this idea of the mazel, the person is gover. It's like the strength of the Jewish people supersedes all other concerns. Therefore, on the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu, and let's throw this little fact in there: Moshe hu Yisrael v'Yisrael Moshe. Right? We explain that really the reality is that Moshe and the Jewish people are really one. Right? As it's known that he brings in footnote number 30. Sheish me'os elef ragli ha'am asher anochi bekirbo, that the whole Jewish people are called like Moshe's feet, were like one entity. Moshe's birthday, which is really the birthday of the Jewish people. And he brings further, Nasi hador hu kakol hador. Ki anasi hu hakol, right? The famous Rashi, where he says that the leader of the generation is considered as if he's the whole generation. And then he says even further this wild statement, which is, as far as I know, unlimited in its scope, but Hanasi hu hakol. The leader is all. He's everything. Right? So v'keva his pashtusa de Moshe b'chol dara v'dora, and since Moshe's extension is in every single generation, kol el Moshe is kol b'nei Yisrael ad sof kol hadoros. Therefore, this man Moshe contains inside of him every single Jew until the end of time. And therefore, when Moshe's birth happens, Gover Mazlam Shel Yisrael. Therefore, not only is Moshe having a birthday, we're all having a birthday because we are all Moshe. We're the same entity as him. So when a person has a birthday and his mazel is Gover, that means the whole Jewish people has this incredible quality going on, that our mazel is Gover because of Moshe. This is why Moshe's birthday is such an unbelievable simcha for the Jewish people. I don't know if you guys ever hang around Sfas, but when you go to the Rashbi on Moshe's birthday, it's basically like Lag BaOmer over there. It's hundreds of thousands of people come. What's the celebration, right? Because really, it's everybody's birthday, because we're all Moshe. In fact, he brings here in this footnote, that footnote 33, he says, like we see, and we just had in Parshas B'Shalach, Kasher Yari Moshe Yado V'Gaver Yisrael. We're bringing back this point when Moshe raised up his hands. Gaver Yisrael. What does that have to do with Yisrael? Because Moshe is Yisrael. So when Moshe raised up his hands, the Jewish people became strong. In other words, when Moshe had some kind of an aliyah, we all have an aliyah. And by the way, we read that piece of B'Shalach on Purim. When did Purim really start? The Simcha of Purim, we said it started on the 7th of Adar. Right? Because we said that the whole reason there is a Purim is because what Haman didn't know is that Moshe was born on the 7th of Adar. So really, on Purim, we're reading a pasuk which is speaking about Moshe's elevation, and therefore Gaver Yisrael. The whole reason that we read on Purim about Moshe's elevation, his and so forth. So in the reading that we have on Purim Day, there's a little hint, right, that Moshe's raising up his hands is coming to tell you why is there a Purim? Because the mazel of the Jewish people got raised up because Moshe's mazel is raised up, and we're one with him. Back inside the text, Umizeh Muvan, Gam Benogeh LaMazel DaChodesh. Now we can understand more about the mazel of the Chodesh Adar. That in that month where Moshe was born, and therefore all the Jewish people were born, have our birthday. So it comes out that the mazel of the month now aids in the mazel aids us because of the strengthening of the mazel of the Jewish people. In other words, just like we said before a second ago, that when you have a birthday, right, the mazel of the day, which could have gone either way, not every mazel is going your way, but because you have a birthday and your mazel gets strong, that it sort of leads the mazel of the day to come and strengthen you. So too the month, right? When Moshe is born in this month, the Jewish people are having their mazel being strong. Therefore, it affects the mazel of that month. So even though the mazel of the month of Adar is not intrinsically really good for the Jewish people, in fact, it's the one month that seemingly doesn't have a mazel, it doesn't have a schus, etc. Because the mazel of the Jewish people is strong, because Moshe was born and we're all therefore born, it takes the mazel of the Jewish people, takes the mazel of the month, and it makes it work for us. And that's why we say Adar Bari V'Takiv Mazle. And that's why suddenly we say that Adar has this incredibly healthy and strong mazel. It actually has nothing to do with Adar intrinsically. It has to do with Moshe and the Jewish people, and therefore Adar is this unbelievably strong and powerful month for us. Moshe hu Yisrael b'shiv b'Adar, the birth of Moshe on the 7th, po'eles al kol chodesh. It affects the entire month, and therefore we go. The Rabbi brings a footnote. He goes back. That's why in that midrash on Esther, it winds up seemingly having this mistake in it. And it says that Moshe, what Haman didn't know is that Moshe was born and died on the 1st of Adar. It's not really a mistake. It's because Moshe, being born in the month Bechlal, already took the whole month from the beginning of the first day of the month, and it made it go in our direction. Right? So therefore, because he was born on the 7th of Adar, it affects the whole month. Shebo Gover, which we have this overpowering of Bari and Takif, it's healthy and strong, the mazel of the Jewish people. Last paragraph on the page. According to this, we can say that the end of the words of the midrash that we quoted before, which is Haman's words, "V'hu lo yada shebeshiva ba'adar nolad Moshe," is that the Gemara comes and says that he, or the Midrash comes and says, it's also in a Gemara, but he says that what he did not know is that on the 7th of Adar, Moshe was born. Hu tshuva gam al zeh she'adar ein lo zchus u'mazalo ein lo zchus. So if you go back to that Midrash that we just read, it says Haman went through all the different months, and he saw there was no zchus in Nisan, there was no mazel in Nisan, etc. He went through all the months, right? And then he comes to this conclusion that says Adar ein lo zchus u'mazalo ein lo zchus, right? And then period. Then it comes and says, but what he didn't know is that Moshe was born. That, but it says he didn't know that what Moshe was born was also a response, right? Not only to what it says, that also this is the day that, I'm sorry, I didn't finish it. He says it has no schus, and he says that their savior died in that month, right? So then the Gemara comes back and says, oh, but what he didn't know is that he was also born in that month. So you think that what he didn't know is he was also born on the 7th of Adar was a response just to what he said, that Moshe died in that month. But it was actually a response to the whole thing he said, that Adar has no schus, and its mazel has no schus. When it says that Moshe was, what he didn't know is that Moshe was born on the 7th day of that month, it was also a response to that. Right? That he was saying that she'ein tzorech b'schus shel Adar u'mazalo. And what it was really saying is that, good, it has no schus, but we don't need the schus of Adar and its mazel, like the other months, where the actual months themselves sort of weigh in our direction because of schusim that we stuck into those months. When the Jewish people need protection, we can rely on the schus of the actual constellations, and we can rely on the schus of good deeds that the Jewish people did in the past, even though Adar didn't have those things, because Moshe was born on the 7th, there's something higher than the schus of the month, right? Which is the gavrus of the mazel of the Jewish people. It's basically our mazel is stronger. Moshe, because Moshe was born, and Moshe and the Jewish people are one in the month of Adar. It affected that the mazel itself will help us, even though it has no schus. These gavrus of mazel Israel. So what it says, Haman didn't know is that Moshe was born on the 7th. That even though that month has no schus, guess what? The month is going to work in our favor because the mazel of the Jewish people. Okay, any questions on all this? It's kind of I told you this is a little bit of a different style, the nun based sichas. It's kind of like he's rolling with it, but everyone's following along? Any questions? Shmuel, you with me? Simple. Okay, l'chaim. Why didn't what? Because Moshe died on that day?
Isn't that what he rolls the dice for? You can't just pick?
He did pick, though. He did pick. He picked the month, right? And he was happy that it came out in this month. I don't know. It seems like there was some type of a lottery type situation. Maybe it was the day that he wound up choosing the lottery for. I don't know the answer to your question. Anybody?
Well, no. So sorry. What is the lottery for? That's kind of the point.
The day to kill all the Jews.
But he already pre-picks the month.
So what else? He was going to, right. So you're saying the lottery could have been on the day?
Well, and it doesn't. It's like he has to use. I can't remember exactly. He has to use the lottery for some reason because of the forces interceding or something.
Right.
So it's like he can pick the month, but he can't pick the day, and the dice come up not Zion Adar.
That's a good answer. I never saw it anywhere, but I like it. Gets us out of a little tricky situation here, at least. Okay. Anyway, let's put the word out to the world. We're looking for that answer. All right. So in any case, fine. Going on to Dalit. Yesh lomar sheis gavrus mazlam shel Yisrael b'chodesh Adar. This strengthening of the mazel of the Jewish people in this month, because of Moshe's birth, nikeres gam bekach. It can be recognized also in this shechodesh Adar hu chodesh ha'ibor. Right? It's unique in that it has all the simcha. And it's right. But where do you see that there's something changed about this month? Is that it is the only month there can be two of, right? Adar can sort of be called an impregnated month. You get a second Adar. Chodesh Kaful is a double month sometimes, and even when it's not, it's still a month which can be doubled. None of the other months can be doubled. Beis Chadashim Shishim Yom, come after 60 days. Val yado dafka nishlam chesaron the shnas halavana legabi shnas hachama. And not only happens to be a double month, but the fact that it's a double month also gives it a very unique position in that it is the one that fills the lack between the lunar year and the solar year. What's the story there? The solar year has how many days? 365.
366 actually for leap year.
The Goyish leap year. You add a Goyish leap year. Okay, but 365 and a quarter, or 365 period is a machlokas amongst the sages. But either way, 365. But then how many days does a lunar month have? A lunar year have?
29.503, etc.
Times 12, which comes out to 354, right? So if the moon does its full rotation 12 times, that's called a lunar year. It only has 354 days. It's missing 11 days, right? So therefore, the moon is like, so to speak, weaker in that sense than the sun, right? It's anyway smaller, etc. It minimized itself. Also in this, you show a certain minimization. But then there's this concept called the leap year, or shnas mu'beres, we add the year, we add a month. What happens when you add a month? You don't just add 11 days, right? You add 29 days or 30 days. And so basically the moon sort of takes over and it becomes longer than the solar year. And that's why every 19 years, there's a system and a pattern of a certain number of extra months that we put in a 19-year system that at the end it gets back to equal. But the point is that if you didn't basically equal them out, they'd be going into these different realities. And one of the Iker mitzvahs that we have, Kiddush HaChodesh, etc., is actually the first mitzvah the Jewish people were given, is to create a sort of harmony between these two calendars. That they should be equal, like it was in the beginning of creation, by the way, that the sun and the moon were equal. This is also sort of hinted to in our constant chasing after the equation of the lunar and the solar years. So therefore, this month of Adar, besides that it's got this crazy mazel, where do we see that it's sort of been elevated amongst the other months? We just said it's the only one that can be doubled. It has 60 days, but primarily it's because it is chosen therefore to be sort of the shleimus of this equality between the sun and the moon. It's the one that brings us to perfection, right? Va'ad la'ofen shel shleimus v'tamimus. It comes to a point where this month of Adar makes the whole year into something whole and perfect. And it's called a shana tamima. What's a shana tamima? What's a full year? Right, a 13-month year, right? It's called a shana. And what's the word tamima mean? Ashrei tamimei darich, right? It means it's perfect, right? It means you've come to a certain perfection, a wholeness, tamim, right? Tamim tiyei mashem lokecha is translated as shalem, right? It should be whole. So this month of Adar is unique, chosen, right? And it can even get to a point where it's Yosu Mishnas Acham, as we said before. Sometimes because of Adar, it takes over and even advances itself past the solar year. So this month of Adar is basically this standalone, which either equates itself to the sun or even makes itself bigger than the sun, which is the idea of the future, when the woman and the malchus will be greater than Zah. It's like very messianic reality here. Kimikol Chadshei Ashana, Shem Chadshei Alavana, Hashachim Yisrael, all the years of the year, all the months of the year, which basically our year is, we go essentially by the lunar year. We call ourselves Jews who count by the moon or are compared to the moon. And we all even say that we're going to be renewed like the moon. Our whole journey towards our messianic reality is compared to the moon. Not so the Goyim, who compare themselves to the sun, and we compare them to the sun. So all these months, Gadla Mailasu Shel Chodesh Adar. It's the standard. Right? We are the moon. And when it comes to the moon, Adar is the mooniest of moons, right? Bari v'takif mazle. It's the strongest and most healthiest of all the months. So like basically it's our time to shine. Why? Bo gover mazlam sheyisrael. Because our mazel is off the hook, right? It starts to jump up because Moshe is born and we're all inside of him. V'kama pratim bezeh for tomorrow. Bizrat Hashem. Pass them back in. What's that?
The whole thing with lottery to the month,
It's like the pshat, but